So, some vocabulary before we get started. Obviously, I'm going to talk about dogs. So, there's not too much. I'm going to name somebody called Miche Germain-Pré. Okay, Miche Germain-Pré. Also a place called Goyer and Bonne-Aubercassel. The Paleolithic and Neolithic eras. Another person called Dmitry Belyaev. I'm going to use the word brachycephalic, which is pretty much the same in French, just add a French accent. And that should be it, I think. Yeah, that's it for the very specific vocab. So, shall we get started? All right. Good evening, everyone. As I was thinking about my speech for this week, I was flicking through my Facebook feed trying to find a topic that interested me. And I came across a post, this was Sunday evening, about an event that took place in Norwich this weekend, which is my hometown. Of course, all of you know that Brexit happened last week, and there was a letter published to residents in a block of flats with the title Happy Brexit Day. And I'm just going to read you, slowly, 2 sentences of this letter. We do not tolerate people speaking other languages than English in the flats. We are now our own country again, and the Queen's English is the spoken tongue here. If you do want to speak whatever is the mother tongue of the country you came from, then we suggest you return to that place. Now, I wasn't very happy after reading this piece of news because my hometown is very dear to me and I didn't think something like that would happen there. Which is quite naive of me because it already has happened to me. Some of you know I'm British and Belgian and I don't speak English with my mum, I speak Flemish with her. And we have already been told on one occasion to stop speaking that foreign stuff and start speaking English. So I was quite upset. So I sat down to do my yoga and was still thinking about my speech. And I looked down and my dog was laying next to me. So I thought, why not talk about dogs? It's a happier topic than Brexit, and I don't want to talk about Brexit because we already do too much. So, the real topic of today's speech is man's best friend or woman's best friend. Let's give you some facts to start with. 20% of households in France have a dog. 29% of households have a cat. I'm definitely a dog person, so I won't comment on that. And 67% of those households that have a dog don't have children. I've seen some comments that millennials are having children later, so maybe they're replacing them with a dog in the meantime, but that's not my topic. I'd also like to give you some history about the dog. We all know that dogs came from wolves, but we don't know exactly when the wild wolf became the tame dog that lives in our house today. Now, there is proof that wolves were tamed to become dogs around 15,000 years ago. The oldest skeleton that all researchers agree was a dog and not a wolf was found in Bonne-Aubercassel in West Germany, and it dated back to 14,000 BC. However, Miche Germain-Pré, a Belgian researcher, believes that a dog skeleton found in Goyer, which is a cave near Namur, is the oldest dog skeleton found to date, and that dates to 35,000 BC. So, dogs may date back to the Paleolithic era, if Miche Germain-Pré is correct, but scientists do concur that they at least date back to the Neolithic area, so about 15,000 BC. This means that dogs were tamed before any other animals were tamed for livestock, which happened later on in the Neolithic era. Of course, we don't know exactly why wolves were tamed to become dogs. We don't know if it was intended or an accident, or even if it was humans who started the process, or if it was wolves who first went towards humans. But wolves evolved into dogs with different characteristics. For example, dogs have developed two muscles around the eyes which help them to communicate with humans. You know those famous puppy dog eyes? That's because of those two muscles. Maybe they developed these muscles to ask for food. That's one supposition that scientists have made. Anyway, so how did this evolution happen? Dmitry Belyaev, a Soviet geneticist, decided to carry out an experiment in the end of the 1950s. He took 130 foxes and decided to choose the most friendly foxes, or at least the least frightened foxes. Because friendly, well, we don't know if they were friendly. So he chose those that were least frightened of humans and then bred those. Through this artificial selection of the least frightened individuals, he managed to obtain foxes with dog-like traits after only 15 generations. So these dog-like traits included floppy ears, different colour fur, and tails that bended up. So that shows us how we also managed to get different breeds of dogs through this sort of artificial selection. Animals were chosen for different reasons, because of their excellent sense of smell, their size, because lots of people tend to prefer small dogs, or their strong jaw, if they were intended as a guard dog. Of course, artificial selection also has its drawbacks. It has predisposed some dogs to medical conditions. For example, brachycephalic breeds, such as bulldogs, the ones with the really short muzzles, have respiratory problems. Or long-eared dogs, like my own Cocker Spaniel Misty, tend to have ear infections. And I can tell you she's 4 years old and has had a lot of ear infections. But different breeds of dog also have different tasks. So those who have a really good sense of smell can be used for their sense of smell. To identify cancer, for example, all they need to do is smell a person's sweat on a cotton bud and they can detect if that person has cancer. Of course, we are talking about trained dogs specifically for this purpose. They can also track missing people, find people who are hidden under the rubble in an earthquake or under the snow in an avalanche. Dogs have also been trained to find bed bugs. A library in Marseille was actually closed for quite a while dogs were sent in to sniff out bed bugs, and it was the bed bugs that had caused the closure of the library. Dogs have a 95% success rate, apparently, in sniffing out bed bugs. Anyway, dogs can also be used to rescue people in the water, to guard your home or your business. If you have a dog, you're actually at 25% less risk of burglary. If you have CCTV installed, then this risk drops by 22%. But dogs are better. Apparently even Chihuahuas. And dogs, of course, can also be used as guide dogs and therapy dogs. The blind use them to be able to move around. They are great companions for autistic children or the elderly. But now I get on to the more fun bit of my speech. Why are dogs such good companions? Well, there is an incredible emotional connection which is built between people and their dogs. Both people and their dogs have raised oxytocin levels when they interact. And there was an experiment showing that if dogs were given oxytocin beforehand and then shown different faces displaying different emotions, they would always choose the happy face. So this leads to us to believe that dogs understand emotions. And I think if you have a dog, you know that dogs are pretty good at comforting you when you're sad. I mean, my dog comes to me when I'm crying. Also, we always say that yawning is contagious amongst humans. But did you know that in an experiment, 72% of dogs who saw a human yawn would also yawn? In humans, this percentage is only between 45 and 60%. And only 33% of chimpanzees will yawn if they see a human yawn. So, they are an excellent companion and they are also good for our health. If you have a dog, you are at 31% lower risk of heart disease. Maybe because of the physical exercise that your dog encourages you to get on a daily basis, or maybe due to their stress relief properties. I know that on Sunday night I needed some good stress relief and my dog was there. So I've talked about all the positives of dogs and I could go on about them for ages. But I have to also add a note of caution that dogs do have their disadvantages, because I don't want to be the reason for any more abandoned dogs. So if you're thinking about getting a dog, don't forget they are very expensive. You need to pay for the vet, the food, maybe even pay more for your rent because the landlord doesn't want a dog to destroy their apartment. There's also the environmental impact of dogs. A lot of water is used to make their food, which is primarily meat, of course, and we know what's been going around in the news lately. There's also a lot of time and responsibility that you have to put into looking after your dog, and you can't just go away on holiday or away on an assignment at a minute's notice. So there are negatives. I'm now drawing to the end of my speech, and I didn't really know how to conclude apart from giving you two interesting facts to finish. First of all, remember those eye muscles I mentioned that dogs have? Those famous puppy dog eyes? Well, 74% of people think that those represent guilt. In an experiment where an owner had to tell their dog not to eat a treat they put in front of them, then leave the room and come back and either punish or congratulate their dog, not knowing if they had obeyed them or not. But the dog would show sad eyes, those puppy dog eyes, if it was punished, even if it had obeyed its owner. So it's not guilt that they're feeling, it's fear. Even more scary, really, because my dog does those sad puppy dog eyes all the time. I hope she's not scared. Dogs feel fairness. They know what is fair and what isn't. So it's very important to them that they are treated with fairness. But I won't go on too long. My last interesting point. The most expensive dog that has ever been sold was sold for 1.4 million euros to a Chinese property developer. It was a Tibetan Mastiff, and if you don't know the breed, they look a lot like a lion. A great cuddly bear to have at home. Anyway, thank you very much.